Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show, it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of the Endgame. A great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So obviously we get introduced to kind of our two lead characters, each kind of going through their own respective situations. Obviously we have Elena, played by Marina Basmann, and I think I talked about this in my watch list where I thought I don't think I've ever really seen her play a bad guy, but then I had to remember, she kind of played a bad guy when she played Lee Tompkins in Gotham to an extent, but I'm like, to be fair, I've not seen everything Marina Basmann's ever been in. Obviously, Gotham and Deadpool are the things I kind of best know her for. But regardless, tangents and all that aside, she is the queen who's manipulated all this. She's this, big-time international criminal that a whole bunch of different the head of the FBI, the attorney general, and I forgot what the other person's position was, but they basically secretly arrested her. Kind of seems like it was kind of unlawfully, at least how she puts it. It's kind of you kind of went through backwards and means to kind of get me. But basically, it's cool, we're going to arrest you, and basically you're going to confess to all your crimes and stuff like that. But she's like, nah, I don't think so, as she proceeds to hit multiple banks throughout the same day, which is pretty impressive, simultaneously. Obviously, there's some, leeway, but still, almost simultaneously hitting what essentially ended up amounting totality, 7 banks, which fits the whole motif of, I like this Snow White motif, I like that. Essentially, it's supposed to be, the name of her group is SMT, and what is an acronym for is supposed to be translated into Snow White. So I was like, that's so interesting. And then hitting this 7 banks, Snow White and her 7 dwarves. I am curious about the people who work for her. Are they people because she hires people, she's kind of herself a mercenary for hire, but she hires people. And the fact is, we had those 2 people talking who are working for her. I wonder, are these couples? Are these people who feel she's helped them in some shape or form? So it's right, what we're going to do is we're going to work for her and do what because she's helped them. It's we're indebted to her. That's because those 2 that were talking who work for her, they seemed almost like a couple that were hitting different spots maybe. So that's why I'm is there something deeper to all this? Because obviously she starts off just seeming like some ordinary big bad criminal. But the question is, it seems like the reason why she's doing all this is she has an ulterior motive. At the same time, we have essentially her counterpart to this being Val, which I'd looked into it because the actress who plays her, I think her name's Ryan Michelle, I want to say Bath, but it might be pronounced differently. It's Bathe. I kept wondering, she seemed familiar, but looking through her filmography, I haven't seen any of the stuff she's been in that I'm aware of, just from the glances I'd seen. She was in All Rise, so part of me wonders, I've seen previews of that, so maybe that's, I've seen her in, when I've seen previews of that. I've never seen the show, but I've seen previews, so maybe that's what I'm, why she seems so familiar to me. Nevertheless, she's this FBI agent who's in a very compromised position because her husband was found guilty of some shady stuff, and he's also an FBI agent, but she still tries to defend him, but defending him has basically heavily impacted her career in a very negative way. You have so he's filing for divorce, which even she made a point, how are you paying for $1,000 an hour lawyer? And even I was that is kind of weird. And he kind of just moved that aside. And you're that is weird. Plays into the plot. But I love that that person she works with, who's kind of her partner, is Anthony. I'm hey, it's Stewart from another NBC show. Well, the actor played Stewart in another NBC show, Blind Spot. Hopefully Anthony doesn't end up like Stewart. If you've seen Blind Spot, you know what Stewart's situation ended up being. But he was kind of all about Val getting divorced. He's the one that's pushing for this divorce, Owen is, but she isn't. She's fighting it because it's we've known each other since childhood. And it was really interesting kind of knowing the upbringing. Basically, she lived in a neighborhood where it's there were cops and criminals. The people around me were kind of criminals, except for she's my dad was in the uniform, and it's I decided to go down the cop route. So she's kind of grown up around, the police and the criminal side of things. So, and maybe because of that, it kind of gave her an interesting perspective. And maybe because of all of that, she's also the type of person who has pushed wholeheartedly for justice and doing the right thing, even to the point Elena's like, you even turned in your own husband. Like, how jacked up is that? Like, because you were trying to do the right thing, because she wants to believe her husband, but she did try to do the right thing, because I think in her mind it's like, cool, because she believes her husband believes in the same thing. He was always about that as well, until all of a sudden that changed for some reason that she's not aware of. So she did what she thought was right, turning her husband in, and it didn't do her any, like, did anyone thank her for, like, oh, it must have been hard doing what you did? It's like, no, in fact, people suspect her of, like, oh, you must have done this and that to help him avoid, like, you're married, you had to have known. And that's always a complicated situation in those things of, like, sometimes the significant other would know, but some other times people are very good at hiding the truth. But you know, sadly, despite everything, despite being a good agent, despite turning her own husband in, no one's willing to give her the benefit of the doubt. So she's kind of being frozen out. The guy who's kind of acting as her boss, he's kind of one of the main agents that's on the ground during all these, like, situations with the banks. I was like, hey, the thing I best know that actor from, I'm not, you know, it's just the one thing that immediately comes to my mind is 12 Monkeys, Cassie's boyfriend, fiance. I don't think they were married. I think they were just dating. I think his character's name was Aaron. It's been a little while, but I believe, yeah, like, that's the thing I best know from him. I was like, hey, it's Aaron. But obviously, circling back, the fact is that for Val, she's very good at what she does, and she's very good when it comes to Elena. And I love that whole thing of, like, she talked to that guy Solomon because one of the banks being hit, he had a whole bunch of, like, his money and stuff in there. He's like, oh no, Val, go out. Like, they have such a relationship that it's like, cool, like, she knows his burner phone to call him inside prison, because prison's pretty luxurious for him. He's just like, nah, that's not what I'm about anymore. He's like, I'm basically here to drop these sick beats or something like that. He's making music in prison. I thought that was kind of interesting. But because she realized, like, right, there's only one person you'd ever bow down to, and that's Elena. And the fact is, Elena and Val have their history as well, because they cross paths. It's like, right, you almost tried to kill me. She's like, well, I don't know whether you actually pulled the trigger or you hired someone to do it. But it's like, no. Like, the bullet landed where it was meant to. It was never meant to kill you. Like, I find you fascinating. She's like, I've come across law enforcement all across the world, and no one is just as steadfast and so has such blind faith. And it seems like the point she's also trying to make is to unravel that blind faith. Because I think in the long run, I think her plan is to make Val see the system that she's a part of, how broken and how messed up it is. You believe you're on the right side of things. Let me show you what's really happening behind the scenes. Because obviously, there's, like, both of them are in a complicated situation with their significant others, because the rumors went around that, because her husband Sergey died like 18 months prior, and it's like, it's the love of her life. And rumors, she said, like, the rumors spread that I poisoned him or something. But she also talks about Owen, because she knows about, like, oh yeah, you're going through a divorce, a pending divorce. It's like, and I know you're wondering, how do I know? You literally just got the papers this morning. So, and it all connects. Owen's sudden being able to afford such a big lawyer, all this stuff coming down on him, the divorce lawyer calling her now of all times while she's in the middle of investigating all of this. But it turns out the one who framed Owen in the first place and has the evidence to prove he's not guilty is Elena herself. But once again, it's like, it's all a game to her. This is a giant chessboard, and she is the queen, despite the king being the point, like, hey, you take the king, you win. But it's like, the queen is the most powerful piece on the board. So shows how meticulous she is to be able to kind of orchestrate and plan all this down to the T, knowing what moments to write stuff down, put it in people's pockets. Like, here's the message. It's like, yeah, it's like, oh, who's the queen? Check your pocket. The note to check your pocket. Pulls out the note from the pocket. I'm the queen. And it's like, yeah. And she's so smug about it, too, and I love it. I thought they did a really good job making that twist with the beginning. It wasn't till, like, the last second I realized, like, oh, the girl getting stabbed is Elena, just because of the way the story was going, you know. But I like that, I love that red herring, making it seem like the girl we were following at the beginning was Elena. We don't know who and why her father was killed. They do talk about the fact is that Like, was she some, like, dignitary or something like that? Because apparently this was in the aftermath of, like, the fall of the USSR, was, like, 6 months in particular. So was her father, like, some high-ranking official? And it's like they were trying to make a point, well, you know, and whatever the case may be, she fought back, killed that father, and killed the daughter, and ended up surviving. I even like to go along with the Snow White motif. She is talking about, like, oh, it's a fairy tale, just not the typical fairy tale you expect it to be. So, like I said, I really appreciate that. It's just kind of like the NBC show Grimm, how it used, well, the Brothers Grimm story as a motif for that. Like, it's kind of almost a similar thing. I really appreciate that element to it. Because that's the interesting thing that they are kind of creating with Elena. Like, they're kind of hinting that maybe she might be like a criminal with a heart of gold type of thing. Maybe not. But it's just like, it seems like she can't stand certain institutions pretending to be something that they're not. Because it seems, once again, it seems like she's trying to call out the U.S. government for whatever shady dealings that they have to do. But it's also on a personal level, because she's like, oh, what do you think this is about? Power, money, like revenge, love. And it seems like it's a culmination of everything. But I wonder, is it because, you know, like I said, I think she's trying to open Val's eyes, because I think she finds Val so interesting, because I think she sees a little bit of a kindred spirit of, like, we're both people who had to fight tooth and nail to get to where we are. There's a street fighter in both of us, and just our lives took us two different paths. You down the law enforcement route, me down the criminal route. And so maybe it's just a set circumstances. It's that nature versus nurture thing of, like, just the environments we grew up in helped forge us. But even though she chose the path of a cop, there's still the environment she grew up in around those criminals that helps inform parts of who she is as a cop, but I think have had an influence on her in ways that maybe she isn't aware of, that Elena might kind of start bringing to the surface. Because the circumstance under which Elena, I forgot, like, the circumstances that brought Elena and Val together in the first place, wasn't she saying it was, like, in Ghana? That whole circumstance about the guy that she poisoned, it's like, he's a guy that would, like, rape just to, like, humiliate and just, like, feel powerful. She, with 5 armed people, took the whole thing, the kit and caboodle, by basically poisoning the guy after he ran out of cigarettes, sent in, like, some new cigarettes that were laced, and ended up killing him. And so I think it's like, oh, like, because they had been, like, the 3 heads that were kind of running things currently were like, oh, like, what is that? So she's, like, trying to work towards sainthood. It's just, it seems like she has her own complicated criminal moral code of, like, there's just certain things, like, she'll abide by. Like, maybe it's just, like, everyone's world view of her is so microscopic except for Val, because everyone sees her with tunnel vision. But Val slowly has been kind of peering out, and unlike other people, she's seen the bigger picture. She's kind of because Elena's almost like, I want you to see me, don't think you've got me figured out. There's a lot more to my story. Because it turns out her husband, Sergei, isn't dead. He's alive in a prison, specifically an American prison. So, and it seems like Owen being in the same prison as him wasn't by accident. So, the question is, like, the U.S. government took her husband, and they've probably been like, that's why she's also doing all this, because it's like, right, I'm going to expose all your dirty secrets, I'm going to unravel everything that you've got hidden, I'm going to do all this, all while taking back. It's not about money and stuff like that, it's about the man that she loves, like, the love of her life. It's like, you took him from me, you made it seem like he died, I figured out what's really going on, that you have him hidden away. Like, I don't know whether he was just supposed to be a piece to draw her in, draw her out of the shadows, because they had their way of doing, like, oh, we've had someone kind of sell you out, but that person was actually working with her the entire time. So the question then becomes, did she do this because they are responsible, and that's why she even said it, one by one, you guys will disappear in front of me, because she gets the Attorney General, because she basically ended up breaking into one of the banks where he secretly had some stuff. And it's like, oh yeah, this is something from your grandma. But then like, oh, here's all this embezzlement and yada, yada, yada. Like you don't, like a lot of secrets you don't want made public. So she wants him to resign. And it's just, she's talking to like the dude that's related to the FBI. And she's like, oh, you're not worried about me coming after you next. And then she looks to the other person. She's like, but you are, because they've all got secrets. So that's what she meant by one, she was going to like force them all out. They kind of disappear. So, because I was wondering if this is going to be a long roundabout way to her freedom. It's probably one of the last moves. It's for her to get free. But everything else is a building block of so much more. Once again, the whole premise of this seems to be, what is her endgame? You know, what is this all building to? What is her final moves? Because it seems like she's always so many moves ahead, even to the point she expected Val to figure things out. Like, oh, when it came to like the main bank that's essentially like the hub to all the banks in New York or whatever, like all the systems and such. Like Val knew that she would hit that, and she was like, oh, left a note saying you were right, and she was counting on Val to figure it out. Once again, I guess she's been prepping and training her entire life for stuff like this, for her to have the mind and foresight that she has. That doesn't just, that, you know, maybe it just comes, maybe there's some natural talent there, or maybe it's just everything she's been through has forged her into the best version of herself. It's like, I have to be best, I have to be better in this world that is a very dangerous place. Her father taught her how to survive, so she took that and applied and being like, right, kind of in a similar conversation to like I've talked about with Armand and the cleaning lady. Maybe it's a similar thing going on here, where it's like, right, I want to put myself in a position where I never have to feel powerless again. I'll never have anything taken from me. If anything, I'll be the one taking. I will be the one to dictate the board. I'll be able to want to make the moves. No one will ever move me however they want to on their chessboard. I will always be the one in play. I will always be the one making the moves. I will be the one dishing out orders. Maybe that kind of plays a little into her upbringing. I'm inferring a lot here that could end up not being the case at all, but these are currently some of the things that are rummaging and going through my mind currently. So there was also the element of Val did notice when she showed off the stab wound on her stomach that she has stretch marks. So it's like, right, you had a baby. Sergei's is like, where is it? And she was like, the baby's safe. So it seems like that's going to be a complicated subject as well. And I'm assuming that's going to flow into the story as well about what that's all about. I think it was kind of a nice introduction to everything. Obviously, the comparison that kind of gets made, I've seen kind of get made about, I haven't read too much about the show, but even if I'm looking at the trailer, I'm like, oh, you definitely can get some Blacklist vibes from it. But also, like, I've seen other people kind of compare that, kind of throw that comparison out there as well. So, which I'm fine with it. I love the Blacklist. So, like, something that has that feeling vibe to it is definitely going to be interesting. I think this is going to be on a different level, different situation. Obviously, I think I'm sure there's going to be similarities you can make to Reddington, but I think Elena's going to show that she's kind of in a league of her own, and her reasonings may be similar to why Red's done all that he's done, but we'll ultimately just have to wait and see, like, her, you know, it seems like we got an inkling to what those motivations are as Sergei, but beyond that, what else she has planned, what is other motives behind what she's doing. We'll ultimately have to wait and see where the next episode takes us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.